Well, good afternoon and welcome everyone. My name is Crystal Frost and I'm a member of the Goodwill Board's Advancement Committee. And every year, Goodwill Northern Michigan gathers together to express our gratitude for the people and the organizations that make it possible for us to meet critical needs in our community. Now, I think I said my name is Crystal Frost? I forgot about that part. We are off to a great start today, and we are grateful for you to be able to join us in this celebration. Goodwill Northern Michigan is a community-based and run nonprofit with a local board of directors that directs our programs and activities. We were established in Traverse City in 1971 as an independent member of Goodwill International, dedicated to serving Northern Michigan. Today, we are able to bring food to our neighbors and help people find home only because of the many, many people and organizations that support us. So on behalf of everyone at Goodwill Northern Michigan, I want to share a heartfelt thank you to all of our donors, our volunteers, our partners, our team members, and thrift shoppers. We are truly grateful for each and every one of you. I want to say thank you to the person who sent in a note of encouragement along with a $10 donation. The volunteer repacking fresh produce for food pantries and delivering meals to students without transportation during the pandemic. Our partners, the food pantries of the Food Coalition and the members of the Homelessness Coalition who collaborate with us to serve neighbors in need. The foundations that invest in continuing the support services that we provide. The team members who go the extra mile for our clients and our customers 24/7. And the businesses and organizations sponsoring our event today. American Proficiency Institute, Priority Health, the Goodwill Northern Michigan Board of Directors. And I want to say thank you to you for joining us online for our event today. Now, during this live event, we are going to be allowing you to post questions for our keynote speaker for the question and answer session following the keynote. Matt from Traverse Area Community Media can tell us how that works.
Thanks, Crystal. Hi, my name is Matt Kern. I'm the station manager over at Traverse Area Community Media. We run the government access and public access channels here in Northwestern Lower Michigan. You can find us on channel 189 on cable television, on Charter or Spectrum Cable. And if you've joined us on Zoom today, you'll notice there are a few different ways to interact with this webinar. And there's a button at the bottom center of your screen if you're on a computer that's a chat button. That's where you can direct any technical issues that you might be running into or anything that you might need from us at the media center. You can also feel free to do just general comments and things in there. But then also there's a Q&A button that you'll see. And if you tap on that, that'll be how you can interact with the Q&A portion of the presentation. So go ahead and direct any questions that you have for the presenters and the guests there in the Q&A and any other comments that you have in the chat window. Also, we do have someone watching the comments section on the Facebook live feed. So if you're watching on Facebook and you're not on Zoom and you'd still like to ask a question, go ahead and put it in the comments section there and we'll do our best to bring it into the presentation and make sure that your question is answered. So that's all I've got. So back to you, Crystal.
Well, thanks so much, Matt. And now I think you can bring up a gallery view of all today's participants. Is that possible?
Yep. Here we go.
All right, perfect. So now I'd like to introduce the people that we'll be hearing from today. First of all, Ian DeYoung, our keynote speaker, is joining us from Canada. Hi, Ian. We also have Tina Allen from the Northwest Michigan Coalition to End Homelessness. Hi, Tina. The founders of Food Rescue, Bruce Bile, Becky Mang, Homer Nye, George Powell, and Cecil McNally, who was the executive director of Goodwill Northern Michigan when Food Rescue was founded. Hi, Cecil. Food Rescue Manager Taylor Moore is also here today. along with Ryan Hannon, the Street Outreach and Housing Navigation Manager. Hi, Ryan. And finally, Dan Buron is the Executive Director of Goodwill Northern Michigan. And Dan, I think to begin, you'd like to share a few reflections, right?
Welcome and thank you all for joining us today online. As we gather today, our country and our community are facing unprecedented challenges. And I'm reminded of the reason why Goodwill exists. Reverend Edgar Helms founded Goodwill in 1902 because he believed in equity and equality. He went door to door in Boston collecting used items that can be recycled and resold for the benefit of neighbors in need. From its beginning, Goodwill has prioritized humanity. At Goodwill in Northern Michigan, we carry on this mission to help some of our most vulnerable neighbors. In 1986, we saw a community need to serve people experiencing homelessness, and we didn't hesitate to begin our journey to end homelessness in our region. In 2008, the founders of Food Rescue offered an opportunity to help reduce food waste while reducing hunger in our community, and we didn't hesitate. In 2020, COVID-19 shut down our stores and cut our revenue by 70% overnight. But we didn't hesitate to continue and even increase our essential services. We are one of the only Goodwills in the country that continued services during COVID-19. During the pandemic, our community's needs changed, and we adjusted to meet them, forming new partnerships and expanding services. Disruption in the food supply chain challenged our distribution system. Our homeless response system was strained as we worked to support individuals and families during COVID-19 where they had no home to go to. Today at the Goodwill Inn, we provide shelter and food for 65 individuals and 11 families. Through Street Outreach, we are supporting 90 people experiencing unsheltered homelessness and 20 immune-compromised individuals in motels. In partnership with Safe Harbor, we are operating a drop-in day center that offers laundry, shower, phone charging, and health information. Always, our focus remains on housing first. In partnership with the Coalition to End Homelessness, 9 individuals and families have secured permanent housing, even during the pandemic. Food Rescue is rescuing over $70,000 worth of food every week and delivering it to pantries and meal sites across the 5-county region. In partnership with the Area Agency on Aging, farmers, groundwork, and the Food Coalition, we're leveraging our distribution system to get additional nutritious food to people who need it. At Meal Services, we're providing 6,000 meals a week. An incredible team of volunteers is delivering meals to people experiencing unsheltered homelessness and to students whose families do not have transportation. Our employees have really stepped up. During a time when confusion reigned and uncertainty prevailed, they were there. Many worked long hours, often taking on new responsibility as we realigned our organization for the new reality. Shutting the thrift store down and reopening them with new policies and procedures placed stress on our staff. We had a lot more questions than we had answers, but our team hung in there and served. I am grateful to our team members. We also asked the community for support, and the community answered. Over 600 individuals, businesses, and foundations donated in amounts from $5 to $50,000 to help us reach our goal for the pandemic support. For all of our generous donors and sponsors, from the Community Foundation's Essential Needs Fund to the Community Impact Investing Program at Rotary Charities, to the donors who dropped off hand-sewn masks pinned with notes of encouragement, we are so grateful. We are grateful for the thrift shoppers who are returning to shop safely in our stores and support our mission services. We are grateful to the donors of used items who make our social enterprise possible. We did not do this alone. We needed all of you. To our donors and partners and volunteers and team members, to our entire community, we want to say thank you. Together, we are living through a time of great change. We are seeing more clearly than ever the glaring disparities between Black and white, between wealthy and poor. We know that our journey is not done. We look forward to working with all of you to create a stronger, more just community for everyone. And now I have the great honor of awarding Goodwill's Community Impact Award to Tina Allen. Tina Allen has made a tremendous and lasting impact on the work to end homelessness in our region. Tina is a gifted leader who led the transformation of our community's approach to homeless response. Through sheer willpower, determination, and skill, she was able to get a group of separate organizations to cooperate and collaborate together, resolving conflicts, soothing egos, holding us accountable, and building the foundation for long-term success. For many years, she toiled in meeting after meeting after meeting, never giving up on the goal of a systems-based approach to ending homelessness. Tina's colleagues and friends have shared some thoughts for Tina, and we'd like to share those with you now.
Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. This is a quote I know you're very familiar with because it's on your car, your bumper sticker, your beacon, your calling card.
I'm honored to have worked with you, beside you, for you in the weirdest way.
And I'm inspired by how much you think outside the box and how much you bring people together.
Thank you for always bringing the most amazing people together. You're definitely one of those great connectors.
Did you have any idea when you started out that your resume would end up including things like herding cats, stroking egos, stoking fires, slapping wrists, and keeping all those funding sources well organized in your mind?
Wanted to say thank you for all your help over the years. It's been a pleasure working with you. You had the perfect level of kind of letting me do my thing and run things to stepping in and helping me out a ton.
Those of you watching and many that will share know she can be very convincing and happened to convince me to stay engaged and participate on the continuum of care when I was ready to kind of walk away.
Tina, what can I say about Tina? Tina, I have learned so much from you in the time we've worked together. Thank you for your leadership and your friendship.
I wanted to take a minute to thank you for everything that you've done in the past, helping us out, keeping us on track, all your hard work, both out in front and behind the scenes.
I remember the first time meeting you and just thinking, this is a cool person that I'm really excited to work with.
You showed me how to collaborate with other people. You showed me how to listen to other people, and that work takes time, and it's hard, and it's difficult, and it's so, so important.
You've taught us all how to collaborate differently and how to work differently.
So I am now a charter member of the Tina Allen Mind Meld Association, so that a conversation like this makes sense. So which thing are we talking about? Okay, so you're going to send me the thing, and I will look that thing over, and then we're waiting to hear from Emily on the thing, and Ryan is going to report back to me on that thing, and then once that's done, I'm going to apply for the grant to do the thing. And we look at each other and say, yep, I got it.
And I so appreciate all your work you've done for us and with us, and all of the behind the scene, under the radar stuff to help our homeless response system.
I'm sure if all of you are not surprised to hear those comments, if you know Tina. I've had a chance to get to know Tina in the last 4 years, and she is an amazing person. And I know that she does not want this type of thing to happen, but she truly needs to be honored. And I really appreciate, Tina, working with you and all the I've learned from you, and all the times you've taught me to do and learn how to work better with everyone. I really appreciate it. You definitely deserve this award.
So thank you, Dan, but you know what I'm going to say. What I'm going to say is that my job has always just been to be behind the scenes and help Dan and Ryan and Ashley and all those people on that video have what they need to do the really hard work that they're doing. And yes, there have been some tough conversations, but there's also been some incredible ones, more incredible than not. I respect every single one of you. I also taught leadership and team building at Grand Valley for a while. And what I taught my students there was that to be a leader, you really don't have a real job. Nobody can really say what it is you do. You're just kind of there and giving people what they need to be their best. And that's who I am and what I love. And I appreciate you all giving me the opportunity to take on something like ending homelessness using my skills to do that. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Tina.
Thank you so much, Tina. So well deserved. And now it's time for Taylor Moore, the manager at Food Rescue, who will present the Founders Award. Hi, Taylor.
Hi, Crystal. Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm so grateful that we can be here today to recognize the founders of Food Rescue. It's an incredible privilege of mine to get to work with them, to get to work with this organization, to get to work with my colleagues at Goodwill. So I'm here at the Food Rescue warehouse where our trucks run out of, and every day we pick up 7,000 pounds of food that we're distributing throughout the 5 counties. And we're able to do this at no cost to the pantries because of the foresight, because of the leadership that the founders had. They built this on relationships. Over the years, 400 donors have worked with us. I mean, you name a grocery store, farm, pantry, meal site, and we're working with them to get food out to people in need. There's no reason why good food should go to waste. But we have a video that I'm really excited to share with you, to share with the founders of Food Rescue, and you'll be able to hear it in their own words, what this program means.
Well, people look at this from different angles. Some people say it was just happenstance, dumb luck. Other people would say that you happened to see something and your mind clicked. And other people, including myself, would say there's something greater behind all of this. Actually, I think it's all three.
Homer came home. He'd heard about this type of food rescue program.
Susan Goodell, who was the head of Forgotten Harvest in Detroit, one of the largest food rescue operations in the U.S., was making a presentation. Afterwards, I went up to Susan and I said, do you think that could work in a rural area? And she said, I don't know why not, and I'll give you all the help you need.
While many people thought we were crazy, Homer saw what we were doing and said, we can feed our people if we can bring this model to northern Michigan. I
have a good friend, George Powell, who is in the food business.
Homer gave us a call, my brother and I, back I think in 2007, and he had an idea and he wanted to share it with us.
And he got excited. Well, Becky was already excited. And then Bruce Powell became a part of the group.
A team was formed, somewhat of an informal board.
Cecil McNally. He said, we can do it through Goodwill.
It was really the first time that fresh food of any significance was introduced into the whole pantry chain throughout the 5 counties. It helped us change the philosophy of how we provided meals at the Goodwill Inn. We went from processed food to doing most of what we were preparing as fresh food.
I don't know how we would have progressed if Goodwill, Cecil and Goodwill hadn't stepped in, gave us an office, gave us all the in-kind stuff, telephone, building, help from their staff, everything. Marty Watts from Olson's said, I'm in. And Sandy from Oriana was there, and she said, and Oriana you can use as a beginning.
We took a field trip to Detroit, down to Forgotten Harvest, so they could teach us the concept, the program, the processes. And that happened to coincide with a huge power outage due to a storm that rolled through there. So we got to see firsthand, somewhat in an emergency situation, how they would rescue food.
And while we were there, because of that storm, 3 or 4 trucks came in full of this stuff, and we were putting it everywhere. People were stuffing it underneath tables, bread, just an amazing amount of food. And I turned to the lady and I said, and how are you going to get, how long are you going to take to get rid of this? And what are you going to do with all this food? And she said, I'll put a sign on the street that says free food and it'll be gone in 30 minutes. Gave us so much energy to come back up here and get it done.
We knew then that it would not be difficult to sell this program.
We started out, I think the first year, that was 2008. And I believe we picked up about 300,000 pounds.
And that was so exciting. Well, now, get millions of pounds.
It's evolved into something so much greater. We're working with farmers, the Food Coalition, the groundwork.
We try and make it as easy for the food donors to give us the good food. The pantries need the food. We're giving it to them. We're raising money to do it. That makes it exciting, but there's no downside to this.
Making use of food that would be thrown away. It wasn't costing them anything. This was all for free.
Where typically it would go to their dumpster and then it would go to landfill, they now were not going to have those expenses.
It was a success. It was a needed program. It helped fill a hole in the community.
We're keeping it out of the landfill, and we're helping people at the same time.
This was a total win-win for everybody.
When you see that things are a part of people's soul or heart, you know they're going to work.
How great is that? Homer,
excellent.
This is your first time seeing it. How does that sound?
Well, it is our first time seeing it, and thank you for putting it together. It's a bit overwhelming just to look back and see what's happened in these relatively short years, and I've often asked myself how that came to be. First of all, if I hadn't had Becky's support, she's the one who really gets me to do things when I come up with ideas, and didn't have Bruce and George, who actually knew how to run a business. I was just pretty and it just worked together. And then to have Cecil, when we finally said, how are we going to do this? Cecil says, well, let's do it through Goodwill. Wow, that made all the difference. It opened the road. Why did it work for us? Well, first of all, we had a good story to tell. We were meeting a need. And Susan Goodell told us from the very get-go, you do this professionally. You don't go out there picking up food in the back of somebody's car. You get a truck and you do it right. You run a business. And so that's how we started. But I think our success is not really that. Our success was that for every one of us, it became not a business or an idea. It became a mission. And it became part of each one of us. And there was no way it was not going to work. And then we had such a wonderful board, and it's still their mission, and they work hard. And it's no one person's responsibility, it's everybody. And then we've been fortunate to have Taylor. Man, he has helped us expand this program, and Goodwill is still in there supporting us and making things happen. One person or object or place that I didn't mention, however, was the church. I'd gone on sabbatical, and when I came back, but before I left, I said, when I come back, you get ready. We're going to do something big. Well, when I came back, I said, we're going to need a lot of money and a lot of support, and I want you to do it because without your money, we aren't going to get this thing happen. By golly, they came through. And so the Presbyterian Church really was a big difference in all this as well. So thank you to everybody who makes this work. Thank you to everybody who supports us. We really appreciate it, but more importantly, the people who need it really appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Homer. All right, Crystal, I'll turn it over. What a great note. Thank you all.
It's such a great video. What a great story. I love it. Thank you so much for starting Food Rescue and the thousands of people that you've helped with that. And so now it's time for our keynote address, and we are honored to welcome Ian DeYoung from his home in Canada. He's the president and CEO of Org Code and author of the book on ending homelessness. It's literally the book on ending homelessness. Let me get it right up there for you. I have a copy here. And Ian is a policy and technical advisor to governments, homeless shelters, and street outreach programs throughout Canada, the United States, Australia, and New Zealand. And Ryan Hannon, manager of Goodwill Street Outreach and Housing Navigation Programs, can tell us a little bit more about Ian. Ryan?
Sorry for the technical blip. I just had to activate Ryan's video, so he should. There you go, Ryan. Sorry about that.
Hey, everyone. Thank you for being here and listening and paying attention. It's my great pleasure to introduce Ian. He, when I first met him back in 2010, I believe it was, he really helped me change the way I did outreach. It used to be kind of random, bouncing around from here and there and helping people out. There was a lot of need out there in the streets. In his approach to ending homelessness, and particularly street outreach, and basically assessing people and determining the people that needed our help the most, because there's too many people out there that we can help out at once. And literally, the tool he created to help us determine people that what help they need and who needed it first, really what it did was help us rank people most likely to die next on the streets. And as someone who works with people living out there on the streets and seeing the suffering and knowing the people that die out there, it made a whole lot of sense to me to change his approach. So I jumped in immediately and started learning from him, and all his teachings and guidance over the years has greatly helped shape me and therefore my team, and also our whole response to homelessness in Northwest Michigan. Thank you so much, Ian. Take it away.
Thank you, Ryan. Those are great words. I really appreciate them. And good afternoon to everybody. It is an absolute delight to be invited to an event like this of Gathering for Good. It is an absolute delight to speak in a community or for a community and an organization within a community that I know and I admire. And as Ryan alluded in his opening remarks, I've had a relationship with this organization now for a decade. And I've seen growth and change, but what I've seen during that time is unrelenting commitment to try to focus on ending homelessness. And for that, I am absolutely grateful. I also want to thank the organizers for inviting me and give my special congratulations to the award recipients, Tina, for the work that is so remarkably well done, and for everybody involved with food rescue and promoting food security in your corner of Michigan. So it's true that I am in Canada. Before COVID-19, I would spend every Sunday through Friday night or Saturday morning somewhere in the world. And it has impacted my life such that now I have the ability to work from home, including providing this keynote from home to all of you today. There are three themes that I want to hit on in the keynote today. And just to reiterate what was said in the opening introductions or instructions, if you have any questions as I go through, by all means, put them in the question and answer box, and I'll answer as many as we have time for in the end. But the three things that I wanted to talk about today at a relatively high level is, what exactly is homelessness? And I know that's going to sound like a very obvious question, but the answer isn't as obvious as people think it is. Second thing I want to talk about are the solutions to homelessness. So what do we know actually works? Which leads to the third part. If we know what homelessness is, and we know what the solutions are, what gets in the way? All right. Understanding homelessness. For those of you who work in the field of homelessness, this might sound familiar to you. For those of you who don't work directly in the field of homelessness, I want to let you in on a little secret, which is people who work the front line of homeless services day in, day out can get burnt out. There's a lot of human suffering, a lot of emotional empathy that has to be expended. There's parts of the human condition that you never wish you saw, and then there's going to be other days of absolute elation and joy. But this roller coaster ride of emotions led me to a place at one point in my career where I knew that my effectiveness had dwindled quite significantly. And it had dwindled quite significantly, not because I lost my passion, but because I lost my focus. And my focus really started to stop seeing people as human beings and start seeing people as widgets or gidgets or just another face to get behind a door in housing. It doesn't mean that I wasn't committed to ending homelessness. That has been with me in my career for approximately 2 decades. It just meant that in my pursuit of ending homelessness, I stopped seeing the humanity. And that humanity really struck me during one of these times of burnout, where I came to realize that I was making the same mistakes that Uncle Larry was making. Well, you might say, who's Uncle Larry? Well, I'll let you in on that one too. I don't actually have an Uncle Larry, but I think we all know Uncle Larry. Uncle Larry is the guy who says things like, just got to pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Uncle Larry says things like, they made their bed, now they have to lie in it. Uncle Larry says things like, why do I go to work all day for people just to loathe around all day and live off the system and live off the government? Uncle Larry says things like, those people, because I love the way he says those people. Uncle Larry says, those people just drink and have sex all day. Uncle Larry, my burnout, led me to a place of appreciating that 3 types of people experience homelessness. And only 3 types of people experience homelessness. Someone's parent, someone's sibling, and someone's child. If we remember that homelessness has a face, if we remember that the people we serve are not invisible, then we move away our discussion about whether or not this is a manifestation of character flaws or moral failings, and into a place where we take a deeper dive into the humanity of homelessness, to appreciate that every single person has their story, and our systems of care and support are not designed to allow people to live the best version of their story. We don't talk nearly enough about the impacts of racial inequality on homelessness. We don't talk nearly enough around how social isolation leads to homelessness. We don't talk nearly enough around how trauma leads to homelessness. We don't talk nearly enough of the pipeline that we create out of the child welfare system and the emancipation of children who are in foster care, or inappropriate discharging from correctional facilities or hospital facilities. We don't talk nearly enough that every single person or family that experiences homelessness is subject to a pipeline of missteps that led to them being in that position. You see, homelessness itself is a remarkably rare event. It hardly happens to anybody. So even though Uncle Larry says that everybody's the same, and even though we sometimes homogenize homelessness to say things like the homeless, every single person has their own vulnerabilities. Every single person has their own strengths. Isn't it odd then that we stand so in judgment of people who need our services? Isn't it odd that we who are housed try to determine who's deserving and undeserving in the pursuit of achieving a home? If you were to ask me who found their way into housing from homelessness 10 years ago, I would tell you it's the person who can advocate really well for themselves. I'd tell you it's the person who's really lucky. I'd tell you it's the person who today was their day. They went to the right organization that had a resource and a human being who was available to assist them. But what we don't talk nearly enough about is all of those people in our society who have the exact same conditions as people experiencing homelessness, but never experience homelessness. Let me give you some examples. If we were to look at data relative to economic poverty, we realize that there are a lot of poor people where you live. Almost none of them become homeless. If we were to look at data from SAMHSA for the state of Michigan, we learned that about 7% of the state of Michigan's population has an addiction or dependency on alcohol, and that over 90% of those people receive no treatment or counseling for their alcoholism. We learned that just under 5% have an addiction or dependency on other types of drugs like opioids. Just under 90% receive no treatment or counseling. We learn that about 4% of the Michigan population has a serious mental illness, and that close to 50% receive no treatment or counseling for their mental illness. And almost every single one of those people who are economically poor, living with a substance use disorder, and mentally ill are more likely to be housed than they are to be homeless. Homelessness is a remarkably rare event. But when it does happen, we also don't understand it. Well, by and large. See, if you look at data, if you kind of nerd out in the space of homelessness, which I'm inclined to do, you come to appreciate really quickly that most people that experience homelessness, it happens once in their life for a very short period of time, and it never happens again. So what about those that stay longer? What about those who are stuck in the condition of homelessness? Well, that leads me, of course, to this afternoon's quantum physics lesson, where I would like to discuss how black holes work, or at least my interpretation of how black holes work after reading Theoretical Body of Knowledge by Stephen Hawking. Essentially, it goes like this. If you're really big and you're moving fast, you won't get sucked into a black hole. This is good news for any of us, like me, who don't want to diet. This isn't about being overweight. This is a black hole prevention strategy right here. Kidding aside, mass and velocity keeping you out of a black hole. Well, most people don't experience homelessness because they have resources and they don't want to be there. If you go deeper into a black hole, it's because you're missing mass or velocity. If I give you that resource or I give you that momentum, you might be on your way. And we see that within homeless serving organizations throughout the world. The help with the form, the referral, the helping with mediation when there was a conflict with their brother that they could go live with, or the ability to get people connected to just that one health resource or community resource that makes all the difference in the world. But then there's an event horizon in a black hole. And that event horizon is really the place by which it's going to take a Herculean effort to make your way out of the black hole. If you're devoid of mass and velocity, you seek out other objects devoid of mass and velocity. So goes the theory. And so I would ask you, of everybody who's chronically homeless in your community, who do they hang out with? I'll bet the answer is other people who are chronically homeless. Our families with really deep and profound needs hang out with other families with deep and profound needs. Our youth that are unaccompanied and homeless hang out with other youth who are unaccompanied and homeless. And that group that goes beyond the event horizon, have had this internal switch flipped. No longer are they a person who's working their butt off every single day to get out of their homelessness. They're not the person anymore who's trying to get the job. They're not the person anymore who's calling landlords. They're not the person anymore who's trying to reconcile with their mother or to get financial resources from their uncle. This is not the person who is trying to apply for government benefits that they're eligible for. This is the person who says, I am homeless, without a plan of becoming unhomeless. And isn't that the space and the place for us to enter into to be most effective? Do we as a society want to accept that some people will resign themselves to homelessness for the rest of their lives? We have to inject a sense of urgency into our approach of ending homelessness. We have to appreciate that for every single person's parent or sibling or child, that one more night of being homeless places them at phenomenal risk in their health, safety, and future prospects. Now, I've been at this for a period of time, as said in the brief introduction, around the world. And I've come to appreciate that there's lots of things that we can agree to disagree on, but how to end homelessness is not one of those things. Because the solution to homelessness is really simple. Housing. Well, I didn't say it was easy. I said it was simple. Just like if you wanted to bake a cake, I could give you a recipe. That'll simplify things for you. Does that mean that following the recipe is going to be easy? Not necessarily. we've got to stop agreeing to disagree when it comes to complex social issues. And I'm going to say something else that sometimes turns people the wrong way, so I want to make sure I say it the right way so that you'll hear me this time. Ending homelessness is professional work. Is there a place for volunteers? Yes. Faith-based organizations? Sure. Students? Absolutely. Business? Yes. But it is professional work. If we needed to build a bridge in your community, I'll bet we can contact an engineer, hopefully one that has experience in bridge building. They study the issue, they design a bridge, and they tell you what type of bridge you need for the load it needs to carry and the distance it needs to travel. Where might we get public input on a bridge? We might ask the public, what should we name the bridge? We might ask the public, what color should the bridge be? We might have non-architectural features that are essentially adornments on the bridge that we might ask for people's input on. But we would never open it up to the general public to say, how do you design a bridge? Because it comes with expertise. Why is it with complex social issues, we open it up and we treat all opinions as if they're facts? If we want to understand homelessness, we have to understand that it's a professional intervention that helps people access housing that gets them out of their homelessness. And if we accept that professionalism, we know that in order to be effective with people experiencing homelessness, we need to lean into the diversity that exists rather than retracting to a place of homogenization. What I really mean by that is we have to understand each person's story. They're not widgets and gadgets. We're not in an ending homelessness factory. And so if we're really going to celebrate and really lean into our ability to be effective at helping people access and maintain housing, what we need to do is redesign programs to meet the needs of people and stop trying to redesign people to meet the needs of programs. We can redesign the programs. We are lousy at redesigning people. Can you imagine if there were other parts of life that essentially said, change who you are so I can give you what you need, rather than you are who you are and I will give you what you need? Let me give you an example. Stay with me. Imagine you've had a heart attack. Now, I don't wish this upon any of you, but let's imagine that that has happened. You get rushed to the hospital. Would there ever be a situation where, upon being rushed to the hospital, having had a heart attack, that would make you step on a scale? Where we'd say, I'm sorry, Ian, we can't help you with your heart attack. You're overweight. And the Surgeon General has been clear on this, that obesity is bad for heart health. So lose weight, then come back and we'll help you with your heart attack. We wouldn't do that. If the same person was a smoker, would we help them with their heart attack? I'd like to think that we would. I'd like to think that we wouldn't say to the person, hey, look, smoking's bad for your heart. Be smoke-free for 14 days, then come back, then we'll help you with your heart attack. Let's say, because of the pain in your chest, you're speaking loudly and cussing because of the pain in your chest and the heart attack. Would we kick you out of the hospital because you swore in the hospital and not help you with your heart attack? Probably not. Well, I know. What if you once killed a guy? Would we help you with your heart attack, or would we say, I'm sorry, sir, an eye for an eye? What if it's your fourth heart attack? Would we still help you? Or would we say, look, buddy, you've had 3 chances. Clearly you don't deserve a fourth. If you were serious about your heart, you would have taken care of matters already. You could be an overweight smoking jerk who once killed a man, having your 4th heart attack, and we would still help you with your heart attack. Yet in homeless services, or more accurately, the people that we support in homeless services, time and again, historically, we've tried to redesign people to meet the needs of our programs. We've said things like, you need to be sober to be successful in housing. You need to take your medication to be successful in housing. You need a job to be successful in housing. You have to stop hanging out with that group of people of being successful in housing. You have to go to this church and repent if you want to be successful in housing. And the list goes on and on. What we need to do if we truly want to solve homelessness is truly, and I mean truly and unequivocally, engage in a relationship without judgment. It is not my job to stand in judgment of people to determine if they are deserving and undeserving based upon the qualities of their character. So what gets in the way? I'd say the number one thing that gets in the way, in my opinion, is our applied morality. I've been researching this the past number of years, really leaning into the literature on moral psychology, really have become enamored with Jonathan Haidt and his constructs of 5 moral foundations of all people, whether you'd say that they're morally or socially liberal or conservative. We share the same 5 moral foundations. We don't believe in hurting one another. We generally believe in a just or fair society. We believe in in-group loyalty. We believe in respect. And we believe in purity and sanctity of the body. The problem is we don't believe the same things about those. And in particular, the purity and sanctity of the body. So our moral dilemmas really come down to informing our service approach. Is it moral to have someone who's addicted to alcohol or other drugs? Is it moral to have someone who participates in sex work? Is it moral to assist someone whose children have been taken into care? Is it moral to assist someone who isn't from your community using resources from your community? If we can deal with our own hang-ups, our own limitations, if we can truly say that everybody is ready for housing so long as they are homeless and breathing, then we can use those professional services, but we can also redesign our system of care. And this is the genius behind the scenes of dedicated people, as we saw talking about collaboration and the journey towards making change happen in coalitions, is that people realize if we want to invest in change, we're going to have to spend on impact. That isn't just spending money, that's spending time, that's spending our social capital, that's spending our intellect to solve particular problems that nobody else has solved before. And if it's not our morality, then people will say the real thing that gets in the way is the fact that there's no housing. There are limitations on housing just about everywhere I go. The Traverse City area is no exception. And yes, some of your needs are acute given the nature of your economy and the tourists that turn it into a summer playground. So I'm not trying to take away those things. I'm just saying, if you say there's no housing and you stop looking for housing, you'll never find housing. Let me also say that one of the greatest silver linings we will see coming out of the pandemic will be investments that allow us to help people get into housing. When the Bezos Foundation came knocking, why did they love your organization? Because you presented an opportunity to engage in complex problem solving, like still housing people in your housing market. I think back to Dan's initial remarks, and I didn't write down the number fast enough, but just even this fact that people are still being housed in the midst of a pandemic tells us that it is still it's still possible to house people, and that it's entirely possible that housing markets will be turned on their head and we will have even more opportunities to house people. But if we give up on housing people, we're giving up on the solution. You know, one of the parallels I saw in the response to COVID-19 was governors talking about the lack of ventilators and the tough decisions that hospitals would have to be making of who's going to get access to a ventilator and who's going to die. And I thought of our homelessness and housing system. And I thought about the scarcity of housing and how that's kind of like the scarcity of ventilators. Do we as a community want to throw our hands up and say, well, I guess some people are just going to die. We don't have enough housing. Or are we going to try to solve the problem by creating more housing stock? By advocating for different zoning and planning regulations where they make sense? By decreasing bureaucracy, by even looking at novel ways of housing people like shared housing. Because the last thing that gets in the way is the truancy in our determination. If you give yourself a hall pass and say it's not my responsibility or my job to go about ending homelessness, then what you're really saying is that someone's parent, sibling, or child doesn't matter. Would it matter if it was your parent, sibling, or child? I'll bet it would. Thanks, everybody.
Wow, Ian, thank you so much for that thought-provoking address. It has definitely led to a lot of questions, and I'm hoping that we can answer some of those for not only our panel, but also the people who are watching on Facebook and Zoom. I think that you touched on this question from one of our viewers, that the community here in Traverse City is talking about how we can get more housing. You know, when you traveled around the world, what have you seen that works when it comes to organizations like Goodwill getting their hands on some housing?
So predominantly a few strategies. So the first strategy is going to be, how do we leverage our existing housing stock? And that's probably going to be what had most limitations historically in a community such as yours. Who knows, again, what the COVID-19 housing market shakeup is going to mean, if anything, and whether or not that'll lead to more housing opportunities in the private market and opportunities for us to leverage access in the private market moving forward or not. So we really have to see in that front. But if I was looking at the CARES funding and additional ESG, sort of use acronyms, that is going to be available, because I even forget what CARES stands for communities in terms of response, you know, I would be saying, like, look, some of that investment really has to be about how do we take existing landlords or homeowners and smooth a pathway financially that's going to get us access to existing buildings. That's part one. Part two that we're seeing more of is acquisition and rehabilitation. So organizations, and I'm not saying Goodwill specifically, but an organization like Goodwill, they would say, we're not builders, so let's not go down the development role. We're going to need a lot of support if we actually go down the role of saying we're like big builders. I mean, we can do small projects here and there, but to say we're going to do like a 50-unit, building or something like that is probably not within the scope of what most nonprofits could do unless they actually have a strong development history. But those same organizations could and have throughout the country bought motels and hotels and old apartment buildings and converted them for the population that they serve. That strategy seems to be gaining legs and popularity, especially now as we think about non-congregate forms of sheltering, especially for immunocompromised people or people with existing health conditions that might make them more susceptible to gross impacts of the virus. So I think we have the how do we leverage access to existing stock piece, and then we have the how do we acquire and rehabilitate piece, and then the third part would be let's build more. And we can't just wait for someone else to build it. If you wait for someone else to build it, we'll all be waiting for a long time. If we actually, much like the Food Rescue Coalition, got a bunch of willing, interested people together and said, well, let's figure this out, I'll bet you that you could start to see some more traction and community problem solving, more than when we just put it on the shoulders of one organization or person and say, figure this out. What does the community response to this look like?
You know, Ian, during your keynote, you spoke about the Uncle Larrys of the world. And gosh, I think every person who's watching this right now pictured their own Uncle Larry. And and how you related that Uncle Larry to your own burnout. And I'm wondering, getting back to your thoughts on that you need to bring the humanity back to homelessness and stop talking about people like widgets. How do you do that, or how does a program do that? You know, um, sharing the humanity of someone experiencing homelessness with the community while at the same time solving these very complex issues.
Yeah. So I say that the humanity starts with the direct service work and extends from there. And the reason why I say that is there should be a strong push towards accountability in our work. So I'm not suggesting that we get rid of accountability, but I'll also say that when we start treating people like numbers rather than as human beings, it just becomes a bit of a churn. Like, okay, so I got, this person has, now who's next in the housing queue, as opposed to, I got this person has, and what was their story, and why was this important for us, and what have we learned in the process, and how does this energize us, and what would we want to make sure we never do again as we kind of go through. Some of that gives the human element back to it. The other thing that I think that we need to do is stop exploiting people to tell their story, right? So I don't want to say, let's grab one person that we moved into housing and say, come and be the spokesperson of all people who have ever been homeless, because that's torturous from a trauma-informed perspective. And that person is likely going to emote quite profoundly, and it often comes down to a sample size of one. One person's story is seen as being indicative of all people who have the same experience. But what if we had a collection of stories? What if we had an amalgamation of different histories that get pulled together to profile some of the types of backgrounds of the people that we're serving? I think that becomes really important. The other thing that I think becomes really important is let the workers tell the story. And one of the things that I really respect about the Ryan Hannons of the world, and Ryan specifically, is he's a remarkably talented storyteller at getting people interested in the solutions to the issue. And I think one of the things that I've appreciated about people like Ryan, that your community may not know, is he's respected throughout the country. So he is seen as like one of the leaders amongst the outreach movement in the entire country. And so when I take people like that and I say, you can live your humanity when you do your work every single day, well, that's also a good anecdote to the Uncle Larry's, because that's a proof point in service that we can keep track of the stories and the values and the quirkiness of all the different people that we serve. And we don't lose that. We don't just treat them like numbers or gadgets. Or Uncle Larry would see them all just as one big social nuisance, and we can't see people that way either.
So based on your observations of Traverse City, of our community and our surrounding community, and what you know of our homeless response, what would you recommend that we need to do?
Well, how much time do we have? No, listen. That's a difficult question, only because I didn't look at specific facts and point in time count numbers and housing inventory charts and those sorts of things before getting on. Maybe I should have. But let me tell you why I admire Traverse City and what I think the benefits are of the community in terms of how it works. I think that there are other summer type communities. I mean, I'm not to say that all of you don't live there year round, but I mean, your big attraction in your economy is going to be summer paradise. That's a big part why people come from far and wide to do it. If I have to think about how do I get like homelessness solved within that sort of environment, I'm probably going to be looking at things like, what is our year-round service capacity? What actually are the opportunities in off season to be doing things slightly differently than what we're doing during the regular season? So is it that we could have, for example, transitional housing opportunities or shorter term accommodation? I shouldn't say transitional housing, but shorter term accommodation, almost like bridge housing during the winter months. And we'll have this figured out before like April when people come back, but you were in accommodation for a period of time. I think we can start to look at that. I think that we can also really lean into being smarter about the work. So when you cover such a large geographic area that's predominantly rural, you really have to think about who are the people who need me the most, not who are the people who want me the most, right? So I think that sort of solution is going to be important. And then you keep building the pieces of the puzzle as you go through. You can't hit a pause and say, we need to get all this supportive housing built, and we need to get this outreach team expanded, and we need that shelter to do something differently. It's like, I'm still going to serve you, and I'm going to support you, and I'm going to do the hard work of changing the entire system at the same time. And that's the thing that I think the community does really well, is it doesn't give up on the big picture stuff at the expense of doing the day-to-day stuff. And outsiders see that leadership and that approach that the community uses and are quite fond. You may not know that, your lovely community is often used as an example of how you can talk about doing things like effective outreach in rural environments.
So in your keynote address, and several times actually during the Q&A, you've referenced some trauma as it in regard to homelessness. And it kind of takes me back to during your keynote when you talked about all of the things that people experiencing homelessness need to do first, and then you would be potentially eligible for housing. You need to get sober, you need to get a job, you need to find your faith, you need to take your medications.
Mm-hmm.
How does trauma relate in all of that? Because I'm thinking about someone who's experiencing homelessness, who has also experienced trauma, and then the continuation of trauma during the homelessness. And then on top of that, you're giving them a to-do list before they can even be put on a list for housing. That seems it seems like an instant failure for a lot of people to say, you know what, I'm never going to get there.
It's overwhelming, right?
Yeah.
It really is. It doesn't come with a natural starting position for journeying with a person if we're not trauma informed. I think one of the fascinating things about trauma, in particular, when we think about homelessness, is I'll bet everybody watching in some way, shape, or form can relate to trauma. It's either happened to us or someone that we know really well. Sudden loss of a job, death of a loved one that was unexpected, divorce or end of a relationship, those sorts of things. I mean, really profound, emotionally charged situations in life. Well, the good news is we as human beings are designed to respond to that. Fight, flight, fright, or freeze, right? We're going to respond. It's going to happen in the reptilian brain. For a lot of the people we support, it wasn't a single traumatic event. It was actually a lot of traumatic events over time that compounded with people. And now homelessness is just adding on to the traumatic events that has happened in your life. Well, when trauma happens to a person, they end up in one of two camps. Most of us, you give us enough time and we stabilize and self-regulate again. We might even come up with a positive impression of something really terrible that happened in our life. I think of a friend, when they lost their job, they were so overwhelmed with, how am I going to pay my bills? And I got mouths to feed, and how am I going to get through this? And this is terrible. And it was really miserable in their life for a few months. And then they got a new job and they say, wow, the best thing that ever happened to me was losing my old job, because this job is so much better and the people are better and I love what I do more and I'm making more money. And then you're like, well, what happened to the guy that I knew 3 months ago who thought the world was coming to an end? Well, he's self-regulating. He's now in a position where he's regaining perspective on something terrible that happened to him. What about the guy who lost his job, who also had a substance use disorder, whose girlfriend moved out? That's trauma. And so those people who recover think that everybody should recover. And they even have developed, I think there's like a secret club somewhere where they develop all sorts of pithy, trite phrases to describe it. They say things like, this too shall pass. If you're a person impacted by trauma, you want to know, when the heck is that going to happen? Because every day seems to be miserable. Or, that which doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Well, if I've already been weakened by everything that life has had to show me, when am I supposed to get strong? Because I'm feeling horrible. I'll just leave it at those two examples of it. But this trauma, for the person where they are struggling with regulation, where it is still impacting their life, what we need to appreciate is that there's essentially all sorts of alarms that go off in the brain on a regular basis. And where that impacts our response to homelessness is we got to think through physical health, mental health, behavior. We got to think through relationships. We got to think through community, and we got to think through spirituality. Those are the 6 dimensions impacted by trauma. If we don't actually focus our supports on all 6 of those at the same time as we help people journey towards housing Success, we're essentially going to take broken people and put them into broken environments and expect miracles, as opposed to providing supports that allows people to heal and grieve from their past experiences in ways that are appropriate to them. Sorry, I got carried away there. I get excited talking about trauma.
It's fantastic. So in closing here, because we are almost out of time, what do you hope that our community will remember about homelessness now and in the days and months and years to come?
Homelessness is a humanly constructed problem that comes with a humanly constructed solution. And it is easy to blame the individual for their lot in life. But really, homelessness is a manifestation of our policy decisions, our investment decisions. What we have chosen as a group of people necessitates right and wrong. I mean, I'm not going to give a lecture on the history of homelessness, but you could track it over time. It's when we've made certain decisions as a society, guess what happens? Homelessness goes up and up and up and up. If it's a humanly constructed problem that has a humanly constructed solution, let us focus not on lamenting the fact that there is homelessness. Let us not complain about people who are homeless as if they are a social nuisance. Let's in fact say, if homelessness bothers me, then let me actually solve it. And the way to solve it is housing with appropriate supports.
Thank you so much for all of those questions that now have some answers, or at least to start with the answers. And I just want to say thank you again for being with us today as the keynote speaker. And that's all the time that we have for today. Again, Ian DeYoung, thank you so much for joining us. You have a great book, the book on ending homelessness. And for anyone who's in the industry, who's in this field, this is a great book to have as kind of a guidebook. And I want to say too, thank you to the Traverse Area Community Media for producing today's event. Thank you to the businesses and organizations for sponsoring our event today. That's American Proficiency Institute, Priority Health, the Goodwill Northern Michigan Board of Directors. And thank you to all of our donors, our volunteers, our partners, our team members, and our thrift shoppers, and all of our professional staff at Goodwill. We are so grateful for all of your contributions and your support. And again, to all of the viewers, thank you so much for today and for gathering for good.